So my name is Sharon. I'm a family doctor in Cambridge. Been practicing there about 15 years. I'm kind of getting over having to apologize for being a U of T'er because I've been part of McMaster now for a fair amount of time. So I'm an assistant clinical professor and pre-clerkship coordinator at Waterloo Regional Campus and speaker. So I'm going to talk to you about going back to what Teresa said, my Twitter experience or my social media experience. And so it really has been for me um, quite a journey because I started off initially joining Twitter at the request actually of a friend. It was a project that we did in class actually in our master's program. So a couple of years ago. And I was thinking of it very much in terms of phone med and really from a very academic lens. And really what it's evolved for me is quite a bit beyond that. It's been a place where I've really been able to collaborate, met many mentors, Teresa included. It's a place where I've really found a voice and advocacy, and particularly in a subject that's very important to me, which is women in medicine, women in leadership. And it's quite interesting because over the last 6 months or so, although it feels much longer, but over the last 6 months, 8 months or so, I've really found it to be quite a powerful platform to connect with others in healthcare leadership. And so for me, that's important because it's part of some roles I hold. And I've been told more than once that being on Twitter and some of the comments or perhaps more the narratives that I've been involved with have actually advanced my role in leadership and probably gotten me some roles. So I wanted to talk about that piece. And for people who have heard a part of this talk before, I know there's at least one. I have changed my Twitter handle to @SharonBallMD. So there's a lot of learning that happens at these talks. So no disclosures. I think the key message that you'll hear from us again and again is what is important to you. That's really what this is about. It's not that we mold ourselves to the platform, but rather we use the platform to convey what's important to us. And I've shared this tweet before, but I absolutely love it. And so Lash Nolan has more than 14,000 followers, bless her. And I think she started probably around the same time I did on Twitter. And I really love this tweet because first of all, I found it very, very empowering. And I think it actually shows the power of the platform. It's just used so masterfully by her. So she writes, exciting news to share with my hashtag, #MedTwitterFamily today, that Teresa referenced before. This year, I will be serving as the first female African-American student council president in the history of Harvard Medical School. And I want you to note what she's decided to capitalize there, right? African-American, a president, Harvard Medical School. I'm looking forward to using my platform to advocate for justice and inspire change. And of course, she is in a picture in front of presumably Harvard looking forward. And what I really liked about this is that, it has all the hallmarks that, mark a good tweet. It's visually striking. It has a graphic. Back to Tara's point about it being relational is probably the most important thing that makes it strong. So it's relational in the sense that she uses words like share and family and serve and advocate and inspire. And it's really that part that I think makes it so attractive and so powerful. There's some other things that she does, like space sentences, but the most important piece of this is that she has found, it seems like, a voice, and she's telling us what she's going to use her voice for. And she has been quite true to that message as someone who's a fan and has been following her for some time. So really, again, I think that, and I'm going to speak specifically about Twitter, but this would apply certainly to other platforms. I think the most important thing is to harness the power of these. And you can do that for social advocacy and to lead change. So I'm going to use a few examples. So before I do, harken back to, I really liked this article, and it was about, it doesn't matter if it's physicians or educators or researchers or academics, clinicians of any sort. There is a conversation, isn't there? Like, should we be on Twitter, social media, should we not? And I thought this quotation from this physician was really striking. So he's quoted as saying, if you think about what I tell patients in the exam room, if I could de-identify, so take away the particulars and amplify that message, it would be foolish not to. And that really struck me because how many times are we sitting there, whether we're patient facing or speaking to a student or a colleague, again, going back to our research, how many times do you want to just yell off the rooftops that I've had this conversation before? Wouldn't it be lovely to share this on a much broader scale? Or alternately, to actually pick someone else's brain and just throw a question out to the Twitterverse, as we call it. And so really that's the power of the platform, isn't it? It's in that amplification. There's also another person who was quoted here, and it's Jennifer Gunter, who's a well-known obstetrician gynecologist. She's she's a great, strong character. She has committed herself to really taking a stand on medical misinformation, particularly around women's health. And she's taken on significant foes in the form of Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow without backing down. And she's quoted here as saying, Twitter is like a giant cocktail party. And so what does she mean by that? Well, what she means, I think, and this really resonated with me, it's the idea that, you know, let's say you go to a professional cocktail party. I mean, you're connected in some way, theoretically, I mean, through the host, because of the content, because of subject matter, subject expertise, but ultimately you're kind of connecting with people that you don't know necessarily pretty well. And similarly to Twitter, it's very conversational. Often you're engaging on kind of timely topics and extemporaneously having conversations. And, you know, to be honest, when you're bored, you kind of move on. And then you kind of enter in the midst of a thread, in the midst of a conversation. And so you have these groups forming and reforming and so on. And sometimes, once in a lucky while, we are able to connect with someone in a relationship that extends past that party. And so coming back to leadership, I do think, and I'll piggyback on what Tara said, I really do think that the social media profile is really essential, not just for propagating your message, but for creating allyship and particularly community building. Teresa spoke about this as well. It's the community build that makes it so powerful. And so I'm going to give you two examples of what that's meant to me. So away from my sort of at Sharon Ball MD, but really there's two other places that I've used it and two other Twitter accounts that I actually run. So one is at Women OMA and one is at CND OHT. So I'll talk about both. So we are not named the very bulky Outreach to Women Physicians Committee anymore. We are named now OMA Women, thankfully. And what we do is it's a committee that reports to the executive at the Ontario Medical Association, and we advocate for patients and communities and physicians through a gender lens. And you can see through the use of hashtags that, you know, I'm sort of communicating here, hashtag women in medicine, hashtag gender equity, hashtag he for she. And so why are we doing that? Well, partly because we're trying to be searchable, and partly the he for she really speaks to allyship. That's been very important. That's been really a commitment. We started our Twitter page about a year and a half ago, really about a year ago, really, in terms of tweeting. And, you know, we have shy of 500 followers, but I can't tell you how many times people have found out about our committee because we're on Twitter and Facebook. Really, they did not know we existed, and there's been tons of good work prior to this. And so it's an interesting thing because we've been able to co-partner with students and with other organizations. We've been able, again, to really reach much, much past our sort of typical circle. This is a tweet from earlier this year, International Women's Day 2020, and of course they're using the theme, which was each for equal. And you can see that we have a wonderful group of people, but again, this would not necessarily, in the absence of social media, really have been quite as known, and we really would have had just people on the email list. And the email list actually for our committee has always been people who have identified as women on their application to the Ontario Medical Association. So we don't really necessarily believe in singing to the choir. We really want to get some allyship out there, right? So I think, again, just very powerful. Another Twitter page that I run, or Twitter account rather, that I run is for the Ontario Health Team. So I think there's about 24 or 26 Ontario Health Teams in the first batch that got approved. And our little one called Cambridge North Dumfries Ontario Health Team was one of those. And I'm the physician lead in that team. And so created a profile, which you can see to the right, a bio. And this is actually when we were very excited that Minister Elliott came to visit us and speak to our group. But what's been interesting about the Ontario Health Team is I think it speaks to why this talk is so important, because even though there are 24, 26, sorry, one or the other, there are surprisingly few that have Twitter profiles or social media. Actually, at the time that I launched this one, there were actually only 4. And so that's actually a very small number, isn't it, in the grand scheme of things? I don't think it's increased a great deal. So again, through doing this, we've had lots of stakeholders reach out to us, a lot of people partner with us, and actually we've been tagged by quite a few other Ontario Health Teams and actually followed them back because of this presence. Finally, I wanted to speak about what Tara and Teresa spoke about, which is really going back to Lash's tweet, which is the idea of being authentic. And so, can we really be authentic without showing a part of our personal face? I mean, I think in some ways you can, but I think for me as a mother, as you saw even in this short presentation when I was yelling at my children, it really is an essential part of my identity. And so for me here, I was tweeting about my response to our former OMA president, Sohel Gandhi's hand wash challenge. And since I cannot sing, I roped in my daughter. And so I'll just end with this 60-second clip if I can show it. So we're ready to take on the OMA hand wash challenge. But I'm actually banned from singing in the home. So here's my daughter Vanessa to teach kids how to wash their hands.
Hand washing is easy. It's just 20 seconds of your favorite song. So first you wet your hands. Then you apply the soap. 'Cause I feel better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah. I'm better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah. We can do this together. Bet you feel better when you're dancing. Yeah, yeah. Ba ba da ba 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 da da. La 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 da da. La 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 da da. Ba ba da da.